One of the big goals that brought me here was to try to build a design organization, and we've had a lot of success. One of the big wins that we got really early on in the design organization was something you might have heard of called Apply with Confidence. How can we look at especially people who are younger or less credit confident people so that we can give them the opportunity? How do you build that trust? How do you get people to complete their journeys to set up that relationship with you? It's not just design. It's not just content. We need to understand who the people are on the other side of the keyboard. How can we give people more confidence when they're applying for a credit card or applying for a banking account? To know if they're going to be approved or are we going to impact their credit score? Now, I don't know if you've been pre-qualified for a credit card before, and then you've gone and applied for the credit card, and then you were declined, and you're like, wait a second, what's going on here? But still, being able to be a part of something where you are taking care of your potential customers, current or future, and not damaging them in any way that might disappoint them, cause them not to come back. Design's about understanding the challenges that we're going to put in front of our users and real people, and how can we pull those real people into our design processes. My name is Ryan Kaye. I've been a VP for the last 3 years at American Express over our product design organization. When I came to American Express about 9 years ago, we were not really big into the design world. A large company, a lot of legacy, a lot of regulation, financial industry. One of the big goals that brought me here was to try to build a design organization, and we've had a lot of success. I'm not the one who's built the design organization, but I've been trusted to be one of the leaders in the organization over the last several years. When I came to American Express, one of my goals was always to become a director of product design. Oddly enough, it's the only role I've never had. So I was never actually a director of product design. Before coming here, I'd been in e-commerce doing design work, technology companies like Xerox, some healthcare, international shipping, doing multiple different individual contributors and leadership roles. But I came down to Phoenix because of the opportunity here. Within about a year, I was encouraged to look into a product director role. So I moved from being a senior manager into a product organization where I started leading acquisition, primarily over international, but also face-to-face, building the tools to sell American Express credit cards, go through the application process, fraud checking, regulation, and then brought banking in as a product manager. Part of what they asked me to do was to bring customer mindset into our product organization. How could we bring design thinking, customer-centric decision-making into the e-commerce function at American Express, allowing people to decide what relationship they want to have with us on that journey into becoming a member. Part of my role in that was onboarding some designers within the various product teams. At that point in time, there was a centralized design team just starting up in about 2017, focusing on our membership experiences, which grew and evolved and eventually did the mobile app transformation. I was focusing on a different area. And because I was bringing the design team together, I was given the opportunity to actually build product design as an organization, inclusive of research and content, to help improve our opportunities and really focus on customer needs. So that's how we got started here in about 2021. After a year, we merged into a larger central design organization under some great leadership to focus in it and really start bringing it to a next level. So some of the stuff we've worked on is the digital app. I was not responsible for that. My peer Jayway was. But we've also put a lot of work into how we think differently as we bring our customers into American Express. How can we appeal to them? One of the big wins that we got really early on in the design organization was something you might have heard of called Apply with Confidence. How can we look at especially people who are younger or less credit confident people so that we can give them the opportunity when they look at American Express? Are we a brand that they're qualified for? Will this impact their credit when they're early in their career? And can we actually give a relationship with them that will allow them to actually sit in the driver's seat a little bit? We went through multiple areas of design and research to bring about what we can get to now in that final decision. where we tell the customers that we're interested in doing business with them. Are they still interested in what we're offering?
You know, one of the things I've noticed, and it isn't a unique insight, but I've noticed that product has always been used as shorthand for product manager when it's really like a team, a group of different disciplines. Marketing doesn't just have marketing manager, there's copywriter, graphic designers. The thing is that maybe it helps with the corporate world to report up like that all these disciplines report up to product, right? I'm a designer in my background, but ended up doing a lot of product management work. Marty Kagan says that if you look at my LinkedIn, I say product lead because I hate the term product manager. I feel like it makes it a non-creative role and like you need someone that's going to be in the details if they're managing a product. But product management's always been seen from an org chart perspective as a more important discipline compared to all the actual craft elements of what makes great products. And that's led to a lot of putting people in the backseat, especially design orgs. So I'm very curious, like, what made you be a reluctant head of product, but why give that up in this climate to be a head of design and research? What personal belief did you have that made you decide, no, this is still the goal. I still want to do this. Can you tell me more about that?
It's almost like you've been in some of my meetings with my team. I am not a big fan of referring to product management as product because to me, the product is a we, not an individual on the team. And part of the reason I came back to design is really how can we bring a little bit more of a product mindset across the entire org. So I've been fortunate in my career. I've been a UI developer. I've been a product manager. I've been a UX designer, product designer, both individual contributor as well as a leader. And what I've found is it really takes all forms within product to be successful. We do focus a lot on product management and what is the role of product management. And we all have our own perceptions on what they should do. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a meeting where somebody has expressed product management's not doing their job. Part of what I'm trying to help them, because I've had this role, is to understand that just because you may not be getting what you want out of an individual on an organization or in a team, doesn't mean they're not doing their job. They're not doing the job that you may need at that moment. And what are you trying to do to help inform them what you need to be successful? Marty Kagan is a great one to mention. He's one of my favorite authors. I've read many of his product books. One of my favorite ones is Dana Olson from the Lean Product Mindset. How do we come together as a group of individual contributors, thought leaders, to proactively bring those skills together in a respectful way, whether it's in product management, understanding what the problem is, falling in love with that problem and coming up with that strategy to solve it? How do we bring the technology team to be part of that contribution in so that they could bring their insights and expertise into how we can solve it a better way? How can we bring the design organization? Because when we say product design, it's still an organization, just like product is a we, product design is an organization. We have to have research. Half of the great experiences we have to do with the content. How is it created? How is it strategically carried throughout the journey? For example, the journeys I own from a design standpoint, there's a lot involved with deciding to come to a large financial institution, look at all of the different offerings we have, whether it's our credit card products, which we're most commonly known for, but what about our new banking products, our lending products? How do we different accounts to help people meet their financial needs? It's a long journey that people go through. And then they have to come to this point where they're giving us a lot of personal information. How do you build that trust? How do you get people to complete their journeys to set up that relationship with you? It's not just design. It's not just content. We need to understand who the people are on the other side of the keyboard. Within my company, as in every company I've worked for, we're really knowledgeable about what we're trying to do every day. And it's really easy to lose sight of the comfort or discomfort that we're asking our customers to go through. What made me come back to design? I enjoy product management. I love every single role of being in product. Although I don't want to get back into development again. I've let those skills wither. So I'm enough to get into a bad argument with somebody, but I wouldn't want to be within the coding world again. I would have too much relearning to do. But the product management side, I loved the relationship building, the problem solving, getting together to guide to an outcome. Design was an opportunity to drive maturity in this organization. I got the trust from the team leading design to pull together a large team of about 32 designers right now and growing, to pull in research of about 11 to 12 people focusing on the customer mindset is at that point in time, they're going to take a risk, and then get the creative writers involved so that we could really do that service copy and content design so that people know what it is we're asking them to do. I'm not going to spend my time or my team's time trying to tell our marketing partners how to do in their jobs, whether it's in merchandising, whether it's driving campaigns, whether it's actually designing the spending and account products that we're managing across American Express. I'm going to trust them to know their job. So how do I take their knowledge in and communicate what they want us to and make sure our customers know what we're asking them to do? We're being clear, transparent. It does go back to that apply with confidence. When we took the initial project into scope of how can we give people more confidence when they're applying for a credit card or applying for a banking account to know if they're going to be approved, or are we going to impact their credit score, making it harder for them to grow their credit because they are looking for credit. It's one of those odd things we go through as we get older, but how can we take that and fundamentally flip the process on its head? Historically, if you apply for a credit card, you hit that terms and conditions button, you submit, you get a decision. The decision is either, yes, we want to do business with you. We need more information. Maybe we're not meeting regulatory things. We're having trouble matching who you are. We think you might not be who you're saying you are, or we decline you because of other reasons that we don't need to necessarily go into. At that point in time, the credit card was going to be shipped. You're going to wait for it to come, or I can go get my credit card, add it to my Apple Wallet, add it to my Amazon account, and start doing some digital spending. But now we've added this extra step where we ask you, do you accept this offer? Because then we have to report, yes, you've got credit with us, but not just because you inquired. When we first brought this MVP mindset into our design and research, they actually brought design relatively late to the table because we were a new organization, primarily siloed under different product teams. We got assembled as a new organization. A little late, we ran through the MVP, which was going to pre-qualify you. Now, I don't know if you've been pre-qualified for a credit card before, and then you've gone and applied for the credit card, and then you were declined, and you're like, wait a second, what's going on here? So we know people don't necessarily trust the pre-qualified. That just means you're pre-qualified from a credit score. There's a lot more that goes into a decision, like a fraud check. Are we doing our Patriot Act? Could you be associated with some nefarious people? That goes beyond the credit approval. And we found that people did not trust pre-qualified. So we had to go back to the drawing board. Fortunately, we had leadership in this company that really valued what we brought in our research, where almost everybody was skeptical of the pre-qualified message. So how could we remove those other things that can cause you to be declined? The fraud checks, the know your customer, the data validation, et cetera, to actually get to that final decision and give you a real choice. We delayed everything for 9 months. And the real challenge that we had from the design organization was, how can we make this servicing an expectation of having to actually accept once you've signed that legal agreement so that people would actually do it? There was a lot of concern around that despite the usability research. How did we launch it out there and test that people were able to complete the application and not just have confidence that they were approved, but confidence that they were actually getting the card? So that was one of the really big challenges there. Now, there's other things we want to look into, like when you sign the legal terms and conditions before you submit the application, is that the right point in time for that? I don't know. That's going to be discussions for us to have with our legal department. I've been approved. So we're having discussions around those opportunities to make clarity as well. But still, being able to be a part of something where you are taking care of your potential customers, current or future, and not damaging them in any way that might disappoint them, cause them not to come back. To me, that was a big opportunity and a right way to do something. And that's kind of goes back to why did I come back to design? Product is about solving the problems that the business has. Design's about understanding the challenges that we're going to put in front of our users and real people. And how can we pull those real people into our design processes? How can we co-create with them throughout the journey to try to get it as right as we can be? A lot of assumptions come into everything we do in life. Design, product management, development. Can we remove those assumptions by getting people who don't have our knowledge to the table is why I came back to design. Just, I love big problems.
So what about like, that's why I'm very hesitant to put like product manager on my LinkedIn. The reason I'm running the strategy for the service experiences, my current gig, Produce Pay, is because someone asked me to. It's a leadership role. I'm here because I know where to go, or I've demonstrated that I know where to go. And that's where I see the product management role. I don't know, like this is a hot take, but it's my podcast. So if you don't like it, you can stop playing the recording. But I just think the idea of an associate product manager or like someone that's like not like a experienced product development specialist, just starting their career in management and owning a product line, I think I just found it so weird because it's all about judgment, taste, and all that stuff. My longtime mentor and boss did a very similar thing to what you did. He want people were asking, "Hey, no, you should own product." And he's like, "Our execution on design is terrible." And he gave up product, which no one like you and him, like I could feel my finger, the two people have real examples of giving up that much power because as a product manager, you could veto design, say that's too complicated, even though it's a similar lift to implement. When it comes to design strategy, it is like, how are we communicating this? What words are we using? Like stress testing every little detail. Because like essentially what you're doing is you're trying to have a computer do something that used to be a front office employee is doing. And you can't skimp on the details, like you're delegating an important operational process to a computer, and computers are only as smart as the people that design and code them. Now, going back to Marty Kagan's book, last couple of years, he's been having to like course correct a lot of misunderstandings. Like you do all this work. If you read his books, he's like, MVP is a prototype, it's not shippable product. But then everywhere on LinkedIn, everyone's like, we need to ship an MVP. We need to build an MVP. My next question to you is, what do you feel like people get wrong after they read Inspired or Empowered or all the other Silicon Valley product groups? Where do you feel like the misunderstanding happens and it leads to this disconnect between the responsibilities between the different disciplines in a product organization?
There's so many different areas I can go into. I think that one of the challenges that we come into, regardless of what you do in life, reading books is great. It grows your knowledge, grows your understanding, gives you different perspective. I actually still read more product books than I do design books because to me, the big area that I can actually help is guiding and using rationale with our stakeholders to really get to the right outcome. I'll give a shout out to my brother-in-law who said something to me once. It was kind of an aha moment. I don't know if he meant it to be as much of an aha moment, but it's become a foundation for me. It's like, my job is not to be right. My job is to get it right. To your point of the product managers who first come in, they're turning theory and they're trying to execute on it. And they're so focused on proving their value and how good they are that they can't afford to be right. But the longer you go in your career, you find out that being right out of the gate is probably the worst outcome that you can drive. How have I gone through? How have I changed my mind? What different points have been brought in from stakeholders, product management, technology, our customers to get to the rightest outcome you can? When I was in product management, I took a different aspect, to your point, from Marty Kagan's book. When I delivered to our executives that I was getting ready to launch a project, which we had invested in for quite a period of time, they asked about the MVP. What is our MVP approach? And I let them know that through design, user testing, validation, we'd done almost 105 MVPs and we hadn't wasted a single amount of time of development. So the cost was reduced and we launched something that had almost back then about a 50% uplift in complete rate. That was in an international market. The changes we went through testing in that market, bringing in those cultures to get to a better outcome were valuable, not the first delivery of code. When we launch an MVP, it's the minimum viable testable product that we can get value from, and it's actually in code. It's not just us that know we are cutting corners to meet a deadline to capture something and call it MVP. Our stakeholders know, our business partners know. Most think this is the way you can deliver something to get me to stop asking for things. And then I won't see you for a while as you move on to your next project. That's an opportunity in product management, in design. It's also an opportunity when we bring our business partners to understand that just delivering a small thing may be a great way to test and improve something, but you've got to do the time to get to something that customers actually want to use. You only get one first impression, and you can't let good be sacrificed for perfect, but you have to get to good. And that's kind of one of the big areas that I'm working with across the organization with my different team members is how can we get good enough? And if we make MVP decisions, cutting features and design, what is that potential impact to the customers? Will it make what we're doing less engaging and desirable? Unlike myself, I grew up as the internet was being developed. E-commerce, when I got started, required a $5 million bond with the bank to take a credit card over the internet. It took me 2 days to download Photoshop. Today, the Gen Z, even the millennials to some aspect, they've grown up in this digital environment. They have expectations. I can look at what's going on and say, I know all the things that are going wrong in the background to delay this. If I get an error on a website, I know I can come back. Somebody's going to fix it. It's going to be done. Most people who aren't in our industry have zero patience. They want instant gratification. Any drop in the experience, anything that doesn't meet their expectations loses trust. And trust is really hard to build. I'm fortunate I work for one of the most trusted credit card brands in the world. I don't want to lose that, especially with 92% of acquisition going through the experiences my team designs. I do not want to damage the trust that we have built through years of taking care of our customers because we've designed and delivered something quickly to meet a deadline versus taking the time to do it right.
And that is a loaded term, but I always stand by it. Like, we need to do it right. And he's fantastic. He works on satellite telecommunications network so that like rich Russian oligarchs or Steve Jobs' wife can watch Netflix on her private jet. It's kind of funny. Our lunches together are just like one-on-ones. We just complain about uh, work, we vent, we talk about professional stuff. And I definitely cherish that. It's something we bond over. And he just talks about like, we got to do it right. And I just decided, how do you know it's right? And it led to a very fantastic conversation. How do you know what is right? Like, how do you come to that conclusion? So I'm going to ask you that question. When you say to a board or executive leadership team, what you guys are going to do, and you're like, I believe this is the right way to do this, I'm going to put my name on it. How do you get to that conviction of putting your reputation on the line and saying, we got to get this done right?
You're right. It's a loaded question. It's different for every single scenario. One of the areas I want to dispel when you think of product design, it's not
Yes.
really a creative process. My opinion doesn't matter at all because I am one person. It's everybody else's opinion that matters. So the only way that I can feel confident if I'm going to go to the board and say, or even the senior leadership, because I don't really get in front of the board, we're a pretty big company that way. But if I'm going to send my leaders to make an argument for me, have I followed a scientific method? Do we have a hypothesis on what the customers want? What is that hypothesis built off of? Is it built off of customer feedback, both digitally acquired versus interviews? How do we understand what our customers' opinions are? How do we understand what is feasible? Financial institutions like ours have been around for a long time. We even have some mainframes back there that are still running to do stuff. So we have limitations, right? How do we design across such a large, regulated, interwoven institute that the federal government pays a lot of attention to? We're taking and giving money. We're letting you store accounts. But how can we bring those customers' desires to the table with the hypothesis, with partnership, build the coalition? So it's not me going in front of the board saying, this is what we need to do. It's so that we as a group have been convinced that we're going in the right direction and it's going to be worth investing in and taking the time to get it right enough to make sure that we can launch something and prove that it's desirable. In a lot of ways, I'm fortunate because there's a lot of processes out there like e-commerce that allow people to explore and decide what they want to partake in. The application process is very similar to a checkout funnel. We ask a lot more personal information. At the end of it, we could say, no, thanks. We're not going to ship you the product. There's that point of rejection that our customers have that you don't have in Amazon. They'll take your money and they're happy to do it. But it's really, how do you build that coalition of people who agree with you? And you're only going to do that by bringing the right data points in. So data analytics, understanding of technology, talking to our customers, getting customer feedback in multiple aspects, really identifying where that opportunity is and understanding it before you even get to the point of how are we going to solve for it? Everybody's going to tell us what they want in a solution. Like brilliant product management, the people who can take somebody who's telling you, build me this, and break down to why and what are we doing and understanding what the goals are so we can do it right. And that's where product management shines. That is when you've reached the peak of the product management, where you can actually be told what to build and you could break it down and understand everything about why the business wants to go in this direction so that my team can help.
Hmm. And when that happens, that is the best years of my career, when I'm not told, hey, we need to build this for this person. It's okay, this person asked for this. I did some due diligence and realized there's this regulatory process we did not consider. How do we solve that? Design and research cast follow-up questions like, what's the law? I worked at a like lease to tertiary finance, lease to own companies. But during a regulatory investigation, I'll keep it vague, we had to run every little thing by our legal counsel. They could block launches. And like the first response by the product team is like, we can't innovate. This is too like this is dumb. We need to be able to ship fast and learn often. And I was like, okay, well, what do the lawyers need to feel confident? And I just started asking questions about the law. What if I did this? How would you defend it in court? Let's say we're being investigated for this screen. Like, what would you how do you defend it or attack it? And then it got easy to get stuff approved because the lawyers like are only as good as the prompts they're given. Of like, what's my problem? Right. And designers are only as good as like the inputs to the design team. And so if product management's just telling them how to design the thing, then you get that overpaid project manager persona. What you got me thinking of when you talked about reading books is, yeah, reading books is great. One of the things I'm super fascinated with is epistemology, semantics, and words. And one of the coolest discoveries I did is how the Greeks have several words for knowledge, like different types of knowledge. Techne is knowledge of art or craft, like technical knowledge. There's Nosco, which is knowledge of something. Like I read a book about this, I saw a YouTube video, or I saw a headline about an article. Like I know of it, but you're not going to be able to be strategic. And then there's Yada, which is experiential knowledge. It's something you can only learn through experience. And that's where you develop taste and judgment. I feel like reading a book should never be a qualification to get a job, because it's more of like it's signal to tell you like which direction to continue going. But then you have to read the next book and the next book. You're using it to chart a course and navigate your career. But at the end of the day, you have to grind and build to grow in your career. That's what I love about it. You're basically collecting evidence to justify the next direction. One of the things I like to do in this podcast is I tie other guests' contributions to future episodes. So Ari Zalmanow, he's the head of research at Twilio. I took his course on how to do research like a detective. He was a former police detective before he became a research professional. And he talked about like this in the court of law, you don't need to be 100% certain to like send someone to jail for the rest of their life. You have to just get to enough evidence of beyond a reasonable doubt, like this is probably the right direction. And it's not a perfect system, but like y he basically said, like in research reports, you show your level of certainty. So you make a claim and then say, I'm 20% confident that this is true. So that's just a trigger to go do more research, to either build your confidence or zero out the confidence and say that point of view is invalid. And then 50% is like, hey, product manager, I'm 50% confident this point of view is true, but I think the risk of us trying this out is low. So let's go ahead and ship. And then beyond a reasonable doubt, it's like 70% certainty. Depending on the risk of if it's a one-way door, two-way door, you've collected enough evidence. And so what I'm hearing from you is when you say, hey, I believe this is the right direction to go, you've at least gotten to like 70% confidence through amassing data and crafting a narrative and point of view that you've collected enough evidence that beyond a reasonable doubt, this is the right direction to go. Am I missing anything there? Or
No, I think that's actually a pretty accurate way to phrase it. One of the first things I learned is that risk taking is a part of this job. You
yeah,
can't know how people will react. I can't tell you how many times I've sat in front of a usability study where something has been thoroughly designed and thought about for months, and you put it in front of a user, they don't notice it at all. One of my interesting research studies before American Express was I was working in a checkout flow where we thought showing that you were getting a reduced cost and shipping a gift to somebody, that would be a motivator. The hypothesis was that would motivate people to add more things to the cart. It made perfect sense. We spent a lot of time meticulously designing it. The outcome of the research was putting that in there, showing people that they were getting a price reduction in the cost of shipping, actually just highlighted they were paying for shipping. People don't like to pay for shipping, but was a negative input to the customers, even though we thought it would be a positive financial statement. You can't ever know how people are going to fully react when they're sitting by
yeah.
themselves on their phone, on their laptop, on any device, and you present something to them. You're never going to get it fully right. You have to take risks. And beyond a reasonable doubt is great because in some ways it terrifies you that beyond a reasonable doubt in our legal system could actually be so low. But on the flip side, you have to actually make that judgment and that jump in logic. I can't find anything that will tell me this is not the right way to go. Back to the scientific method. You don't really prove hypothesis. You just don't disprove them. And once you
Mhm.
disprove something, or you've tried hard enough to disprove something, eventually you have to give up and say, I think this is probably the right answer.
When I hear the term validate, we need to validate this. In the realm of psychology, that behavior would be seen as narcissistic, right? Like you're basically saying, I need to confirm my bias. Another great researcher I talked to said, no, like it's the scientific method is literally you're doing all of the research that is possible to prove it wrong. You're trying to invalidate. If it stands on its own merit, you're just like, okay, cool. Like this is our best explanation of this phenomenon. I really appreciate that because it's also less work, honestly. If you're just like, okay, cool, let's try to invalidate it. I like the idea and I hope it's true. That's faster than collecting evidence for a bad idea to validate it. That's way more work. And it also leads to you getting fired potentially. Could you tell me about a time where your team invalidated something that would like had it politically, it was just like everyone wants to do this. This is a great idea. It doesn't have to be at Amex. Anytime in your career where there's a good case study of that.
I mentioned the shopping cart one where we put
Yeah.
tons of time into not just designing, but building a prototype and technology. And in the end, we just said, don't do this. This will be a mistake. On the flip side, I mentioned earlier, I could tie it back to the apply with confidence. We spent 9 months of technology, product, getting everybody on board that this pre-qualified solution was the right way to go. And when we put it in front of our customers, they hated it. They did not like it. Even if it would seemed like the right thing to do, they were not receiving it the way because there was still no confidence that they would actually be approved. And the fact that we were able to go in front of large group and investment and say, we need to put this on pause and take it back to the drawing board. We went through 3 or 4 versions. To your point, the legal team, they weren't really happy with what we were saying. Are you meeting that 80% approval rate? How are we going to ensure that? So legal is worried about it. You have risk and compliance. You have the credit bureaus not necessarily being comfortable with it. So there's a whole lot of different people moving in the direction to say pre-qualified is the right way to go. But our customers didn't like it. And what's the point in building something they don't like? Since the last thing to get us that last mile was getting the final decision through all the other checks that we usually save for later, they took the chance. They went and built a bigger, more robust solution to get it right. And it's been very successful to the point that we've said, I can't prove it, but I do believe that part of the reason we're seeing the Gen Zs grow so much at American Express is because they can find out if they're approved. They're new to the credit industry. They've just got their big jobs out of school. They can now take a chance with a brand that is trusted versus going to other ones that are more apt to take risk on people without credit history. So I think those kind of decisions, to your point, are when we've been able to actually stop the ball rolling up. It doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes we say, this isn't a great idea. And we get the, well, we're going to do it anyway. Okay, let's see how it goes. And then we'll learn. Because sometimes you learn from bad. One of the other things that I say probably too much is I've never really learned from a success. I only learn from failures. Success just validates that I was doing something right to begin with. And I probably have done it before. Failures, you learn. At least something not to do. And the other point that you talked about is failing fast. Failing fast is important as long as the people you're working with understand what you mean. And that is, let's know it's not going to be successful before we spend a bunch of time and money and development costs and risk putting it out there for our customers. We're a bank. We can't take risks. So to your point of going fast, do people come into our company and say, we should be building things faster? Well, faster, it'd be nice, but that comes with risk. And that risk doesn't necessarily just impact the company. That risk is to our customers, to the people with accounts with us. You've got to balance that speed, the desire to make change with what is the right thing to do. It's not about my personal ego or portfolio or what I can walk to my next job when you're at this. It's about doing the right thing.
American Express has 100 years of product market fit. So that's not the issue, right? Like you're not trying to figure out like, will they buy from us? Like, no, they want to. It's just, how do you make it easier so they don't have to think, right? And I feel like when I explain why you want to do like innovations on the front end for like customer experiences, like really sweat the details on the like the UI, it's because for internal tools, yeah, you're putting a captive audience, subject matter expert, like they could fill in the gaps on like usability and like they're getting paid to do it. And I still argue that you at least need to have some level of usability so that you could support their work. But for customer facing, the reason why you want to go hard on innovating on, especially for Gen Z, is because no one wants to think when they interact with a utility like a bank or a credit card. They just want to know, hey, am I good? Do I have a payment coming up? That's it. Close the app.
That's a big part of it. But I also think that there is another part of it that we have to take into account. Because we are a credit card company, we may be the most trusted brand, and our brand Halo does a lot to build that trust. But people still come to us with skepticism. Where are the hidden fees? How are you going to get extra money out of me? What are you going to do? Because we've all been told the boogeyman stories about the big bad credit card companies who destroy people's lives. Most of us grew up with our parents saying credit cards are bad. Credit cards are amazing. Credit cards are one of the best financial inventions we've ever had. But what we have to do in our design is we have to build that trust through transparency so that people don't wonder what we're hiding. So that's the part about getting it right. We don't want to make any technological risks that could impact people, but we also want to build confidence and trust with people. Acquisition is your first experience with a brand. We want to make sure we get off on the right foot, build a trusting relationship. and that you come back to us as you grow and evolve over time. The products, whether they're credit cards or banking, that our marketing and line of businesses build are amazing products. You look at the platinum card, it's not the cheapest card on the annual fee, but the benefits, if you know how to do it and get it, so far outweigh the cost that how would you not want that? And that's part of the whole construct that we have to think about. From the beginning of skepticism, people learn how to do business with us, and we build that trust by not letting them down.
Yeah, and they know the rules of the game going into business with you. Like, I think a great example of expensive credit cards have the Venture X, but I'm also a big fan of the Amex credit cards, Pay at Planet, the ability to use your balance for Venmo. I don't know how you guys came up with that, but it's awesome, right? And it's probably research. Short answer is research, but Capital Capital One did this really awesome thing where they launched the Venture X travel credit card. It's like $375 a year, but you get like $300 credit on their travel portal to put towards any travel expense. And when the first year I did it, it was very convoluted. Like, okay, so you want to apply your travel credit to this? Okay, well, let's say it's $600 for this car rental. You're still going to pay the $600, and within the next credit card cycle, we'll give you the credit. And it's like, keep checking my phone. Then they just made one small tweak. I'm sure through research insight, they're just like, no, you just get it. Like the credit's instantly applied, and they see it in like the itemized like checkout experience. And I think what I'm learning from you is that like as Gen Z and millennials, as we keep aging, we're not looking for pre-qualifications. We're looking for definitive experiences. And to be honest, like pre-qualifications, I had a very similar experience at that financial company I worked for. It's probably an artifact of a time when you needed a bunch of human underwriters to review, but we have the technology now to provide a definitive answer. And we should just do that. Based off everything that we've said, like, do you feel like there is something that hasn't been said that should be said before we wrap up this conversation?
Yeah. I mean, it's with the realization that digital product management and digital product design, they're new. They're still in the infancy of their careers. We've got a lot to grow on there. I personally have never worked for a company before that has put this much trust and investment in a new organization because they get it. They know that they need to change the way. American Express is over 200 years old, right? They started out as a freight forwarding company. They became a traveler's check company. When they thought of this credit card idea, they figured it would get up almost 10% the value that they got off traveler's checks. I don't know the last time somebody had an American Express traveler's check, but I know when my last one was. I think there's still exciting things to come as
Yeah.
American Express evolves. I'm working as part of building a design structure. How often do you get to build a brand new structure and agency like design and product management in a company that's 200 years old? That's part of what I love about here. There's so many opportunities. Just keep an eye out on American Express. We're evolving. I think we're going to grow both in design, product management, our digital footprint. We've got great leadership. And to your point, you talked about the tools. There's wonderful people in the line of business building amazing tools and products that we want to use. We are investing in digital transformation, getting acquisition right. We're winning awards for the mobile app, which my peers are designing in the other worlds. We're doing amazing things. If you're in design and product management, it's a great place to keep your eye out for growth. It's coming a long way, and I'm really proud of the company.
Yeah, I have been very impressed. I definitely undershot my product market fit estimate. 200 years. It's a little bit more than what, like, it's 200%. It's more than what I guessed. I'm like, oh, 100 years. Yeah, like that's pretty old. American Express, they could have said we're a freight forwarding company. And they're like, huh, like we see this problem of liquidity. So then they invent like traveler's checks. And then the credit card technology came out and they reinvented around that. Like I think they're like the David American Express is like the David Bowie of financial companies. Like they consistently reinventing themselves and staying relevant. How you do that is you don't tie yourself down to the offer. The technology always gets better. We're not married to the technology. We're always going to iterate. And that's what I learned from you today. Anybody that's looking for an awesome, like forward thinking, innovative job, you don't always have to go to a new startup. Like there's places like American Express. So Ryan, thank you so much for providing these insights and being very detailed in your explanations. I really admired that and very articulate. Thanks for coming on the show. You have a good one.
Thank you, Caden.
Hey listener, thanks again for listening to The Way of Product. As we power down today's session on the fusion of creativity and technology, let's solidify the energy you've gotten from our dialogue today. If you've gleaned insights or strategies that could turbocharge your projects, I have a small but powerful ask. Swing by the platform where you're hearing this and leave a review. Think of it as your digital high five to us. It's a fuel that propels this content to more creative technologists like you, amplifying the impact of the shared knowledge. So until our next interview, keep pioneering and pushing the envelope. Thanks again for lending your ears and your imagination to our community. Catch you on the next download.